Now, I'm going to take you to May 21, 2016, and I'd like you to describe for the jury what took place that evening in connection with Mr. Depp.
Johnny and I had not seen each other for the better part of a month, or about a month. I was traveling. I had just shot a campaign in Italy. I spoke to him around that time when I was in Italy. I had gotten a phone. My parents got a hold of me. After I spoke to my parents, I had communicated with Johnny. He, on that phone call, you know, I didn't know what was going on with him for those weeks. With his sobriety, I didn't know where his state was. I didn't know what state he was in. And when I spoke to him, he was saying what I can only just, he was going on about scientists and DNA and feces, that he had some you know, scientific analysis done and DNA analysis done, and that, you know, as soon as I heard about this feces, he thought that was a prank, and he was going on about all the scientists that he had conferred about the DNA results with. I just thought he was out of his mind, and thought clearly the drinking and the drugs are not getting better. Clearly the delusions aren't better. So
objection calls for speculation.
It's not about the truth of the matter. We're talking about what her.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Please continue.
So I hung up from that phone call, assuming that, and then spoke to him once my parents got a hold of me to tell me about Betty Sue. We made a plan, Johnny and I, for him to come over. He said he really needed his wife. He had lost his mother and he missed his wife. He really needed his wife. He said it over and over again. I felt torn. I felt conflicted. I didn't think, obviously, the situation hadn't gotten better with Johnny mentally, and I was afraid that all the work and progress and distance I had finally got on it, on the relationship for the first time. I had a month of distance on it, you know. I didn't want that to be undone, but I also wanted to be, you know, I was affected by the fact that his mother had passed. So he said he wanted to come over and talk about that, and he said he needed his wife, and we made a plan. We made a plan for him to come over during the day, thinking that that might mitigate the amount that he would be drinking. Night is a little bit more dangerous. And in the early evening hours, I get a text from him that he's almost there, or that he's there. I think it was around 7:15 or so. And he came over, and we sat on the couch, and at first it was relatively peaceful. I mean, I could tell he was inebriated, but it makes sense. In my head, it made sense. He wasn't like incoherent. It was peaceful. And then he starts talking about the feces again, and this prank that he said one of my friends had left for him in my bed that he wasn't going to be at. And I tried to point out how that didn't make any sense. I'm not even going to be there. I wasn't there. And my friends wouldn't do that. That's not something a bunch of 30-year-old women think is funny. What is he talking about? And he just kept going on and on about it. So I text my friend that it's...
Objection, hearsay.
Don't tell the jury what you texted your friend, but go to the next thing. What did you do next?
I called my friend thinking that it would quell this, what I could only see as a delusion. I thought it was just a delusion he was having, and I thought, oh, I'll hopefully, you know, quell this by calling my friend to if he hears my friend say that didn't happen.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
It's not out for to prove the truth of it. Thank you. Please continue.
So I thought if I could get my friend on the phone to prove that this didn't happen, we could move on and talk about the issues that we should be talking about. You know, our marriage was over and falling apart in frent of our eyes. We hadn't seen each other for a month, and his mom had just passed. I couldn't believe he wanted to talk about feces. So I call this friend thinking that we'll take care of it. The friend doesn't answer. I call another friend who is someone else he claimed. I don't know how both people did this, but he was claiming that this person was responsible. So I call that person. And that person is on speakerphone. And I
Tell
say,
us who that person is.
Io.
Io, tell it right?
Io, tell it right.
Okay. And then you put him on speakerphone with Johnny.
Right in front of Johnny.
Okay. And what happened next?
I allowed for an opportunity for Io to say why this is impossible.
Objection,
It's
hearsay.
not offered to prove the truth of the matter, as asserted, Your Honor. It's explaining the context that leads to the next acts.
Your Honor, it is being offered
We're
to
not
prove
here. We're not here
no,
about whether Io.
I'll sustain
on
the
the back.
objection. Next question.
All right. All right. So Io is talking. You can't tell us what he said. Okay.
Objection,
He's
Your
talking,
Honor.
correct?
May we approach?
Okay.
So Io is talking. We can't say what he said. What is the next thing that happens on your end with Mr. Depp?
It just made Johnny madder. He got more upset, grabbed the phone, and started screaming at Io. He just started screaming at the top of his lungs, said, "You dyke bitch, you don't know what you're talking," just screaming expletives, insulting names, and telling Io that he can have me and, fuck off, and just screaming at him. It's best I can describe it without getting into the details. He tosses the phone, down on the couch and heads upstairs. I pick up the phone and try to, apologize for the fact that my husband at the time just screamed at my friend on a cold call. I didn't want Io to think that's why I had called Io, to just be screamed at and blamed for something that sounded crazy, for lack of a better explanation. It sounded crazy. Io said something to me on speakerphone, and reminded me I wasn't safe.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Your Honor, it's not offered to prove the truth of the matter. It's to show what caused Mr. Depp to be set off and come back. I mean, it's not offered to prove the truth of what he's saying. It's not hearsay. In that
I'll
nature.
overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Thank you. Please tell us what Io said and what then happened with Mr. Depp.
Io said, "Amber, get out of the house. Get out of the house now. You're not safe. Get out of that house." Io had been there after the cleanup, or for the cleanup, after December 15th, 2015 incident, and
Objection,
had washed
Your Honor,
blood out of my
non-responsive.
pillowcases.
I think she can provide the
I'll
context.
sustain the objection. Next
Okay.
question.
So please continue.
Johnny hears this when he's on the stairs. He made it up one flight of stairs. Heard this, turned around, came bolting down the stairs, grabbed the phone from my hand, and really started screaming this time. Lit into Io, called Io every imaginable horrible name that you can say to a LGBTQIA person, for one, and any person, any human being ever. I mean, just screamed at Io. Some really nasty stuff, and when he was done, he says, you want to have my woman now, you want to have my bitch, you take her, you can have her. And he, with that, just pulls his arm back with the phone and throws it at my face. Hit me right in it felt like my eye. I put my head in my hands and immediately start crying. I said, "You hit me with the phone. Johnny, you hit me." And I'm sitting on the couch. I didn't even have time to react, you know. I didn't even have time to put my hands up. I was still sitting cross-legged in my socks on the couch, and I haven't seen him for a month. And last, several times now that I've seen him, he's hit me, and I didn't even have time to react to this. He comes over to me as I'm crying, and he does that taunting thing to me. He says, "Oh yeah, I hit you, huh? I hit you, yeah?" And he just feels like whacks me on top of my head. Just this heavy ringed hand landed on top of my skull, grabs me by the hair, yanks me up off the couch. I'm struggling to stand up. And I don't know if he was intending to hit me in the face or if he was just trying to grab my face, but he was making this gesture around my face to try to expose my face to him. And he was like, "Yeah, let me see how bad I hurt you. Let me see it. Let me see how bad I hurt you this time. What if I pull your hair back? What if I pull your hair back?" And he yanks my hair back. I'm trying to prevent him from landing the blows to my face. I'm trying to prevent my face from being exposed. And I just remember this mocking taunt he was doing with me as he is yanking me around the room. And then I hear my friend come into the room. I hear her. Johnny hears her too. He lets go of me and turns. And
Just tell the jury who your friend is.
Raquel, my best friend at the time, who lived in the neighboring apartment, she came in, and Johnny moved towards her, and she ran towards me. Johnny looked at her, looked at me. I retreated to the only place I had to go, which is the corner room where the couch was. I retreated kind of to the couch, and Raquel and Johnny both ran up to me. Raquel got in front of Johnny. She kind of managed to get right in front of him, in between he and I. And I'll never forget it, just very slowly, calm, in just a very slow but very concentrated, very controlled, slow way, just put both of her arms, her hands up like this, and like I've seen people do with horses. That's what it reminded me of. She just went, "No, no, Johnny, no." And she just got in front of us, in between us, put both of her palms out. Johnny kind of squared off to her, ran into her arms, and she just repeated herself very slowly, very calmly, very directly. He hit both of her arms off of his chest like that and barreled towards me. I instinctively curl up on the couch, and I just feel her arms come around me, next to me. She was sitting on my left next to me on the couch, and I just feel her arms around me. And I'm just looking down at the carpet, feeling her arms. And that's when Johnny, who I can see partially and hear, is right in front of me, and he's screaming at me to get the fuck up. "Amber, get the fuck up. Amber, get the fuck up. Amber, get the fuck up." And every single time he said it, he's screaming it louder and louder and louder. I think he screamed it probably about 10 times, so loudly. The next thing I hear is, "Boss, boss." And I realize that his 2 security guards had come into the apartment after Raquel. I see them or hear them, and Johnny turns to them, and I see Jerry say, "Boss, boss." And I get up off the couch, and I say to Jerry,
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Not offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted at all.
I'll sustain the objection.
All right.
Next one.
So don't tell us what you said to Jerry, just what happened next.
then they tell him something. and he picks up the bottle that I guess he walked in with. It was a
This is
Magnum.
Mr. Depp or Jerry?
I'm sorry, Johnny.
Okay.
And starts smashing things off the nightstand, the coffee table, starts screaming, and they kind of, I feel them kind of corral him. I'm not making direct eye contact, but I can kind of just sense and feel and sound and hear things smashing as he exits the apartment, kind of knocking things off the countertops and breaking things on the way. I realize he's punching something. I assume it was the picture because it broke right after he walked past it. And he leaves that apartment. I hear him in the hallway, still screaming. I hear more doors opening, more racket. Eventually, Josh, Raquel's husband, comes into the room and brings me to safety, brings Raquel and I to safety in their apartment. And that's where I stayed for the next few hours.